Welcome back to BeerFormers. This is episode 37, and we have something special in store for you tonight, I think. Or
Great.
Whenever you watch this. We went to a really cool place a few weeks ago that we knew about, Lake of the Ozarks, for our beer, so we'll get into that here in a minute, so we're excited about that. We weren't able to bring you the beer with us, so we'll be sampling something else tonight, so stay tuned for that. But for our Transformer for this week, we're going to be talking about the Primes.
And I don't know what this means. So.
Okay.
I mean, I know about Optimus Prime, so I'm assuming it has something to do with that.
Yeah. For a long time, the basic history of Transformers was that it was the intellectual property of the Japanese company Takara, that Hasbro bought the license to bring the toys over, and Hasbro made up the storyline around these toys. So basically, they took existing toys, made up a whole new story about it. Right. It was a fairly common thing that took place in the 80s. We've talked about this in other episodes. And then
was it cultural appropriation?
No, it really wasn't. But different writers like Bob Budiansky, who's probably credited for basically creating the concept of the Transformers as we know it. He was a writer for Marvel. He has, he's got a lot of his stamp on the mythos. Writers like Simon Furman, who was a Marvel writer from England, who kind of put his stamp on things. And so basically, the idea of like the backstory of the Transformers has evolved slowly over time. And the Transformers are basically what you would call, with Marvel Comics making this popular these days, a part of a multiverse. So there's a Transformers multiverse. So depending on which universe you're talking about, what we're talking about tonight might not be necessarily true. But the mythos of the Primes basically kind of it comes down to like some bit of tinkering from Simon Furman and other people. So like back in the mid early 2010s, like maybe around that time, the Hasbro got together and said, let's have a unified vision for the
Transformers. It sounds very comic bookish.
Yeah, let's have a unified vision for our mythos, and it was dubbed the Aligned Continuity because they're kind of pulling parts of everything like that. Okay. And in this original story, the Transformers were the progenitor, or not the progenitors, they were the successors of the god Primus, who was like the god of light. The counterpart to Unicron, like the Transformers equivalent of the devil. Right? Okay. And so Unicron is like the destroyer of worlds. Primus is the bringer of light. Primus in his fight with Unicron, takes the form of Cybertron. He his consciousness goes into like this planetoid and becomes Cybertron. Long story short, right? And then to help fight Unicron, Primus creates 13 original robots. To he gives a little bit of his portion of his power.
So one better than the Apostles.
I guess so. Yeah. And then they fight Unicron and drive him underground. He kind of goes into hiding for until he comes back again at some point in the future. And these original 13 or what they call the Primes. Okay. And each one is like an archetype of future Transformers. They're kind of progenitors of future Transformers, right? And so not all of them have the name Prime. Originally, Optimus Prime, that was just a name. But over time, it became like a title. Prime becomes like, his title. He's Optimus, but he's Prime. He's in charge of the Autobot. Okay. That's not how it always was. That kind of came about later over time. But so in the 13, they were built. They did their thing against Unicron, and then they fell into infighting, and because they didn't have anything to do, I guess. And then they eventually kind of...
it happens.
Things happen, and the rest of the Transformers kind of start getting made, and they kind of either die or fade into obscurity or whatever like that.
How do they die?
Well, Transformers are, even though they're robots, they're living beings. They have a soul, so they can pass on.
Oh, that's true. We all know.
And depending on which continuity you go into, sometimes the Primes didn't die. Whatever. So, but anyway, they had their stamp. They put their mark on the world, and then they kind of faded into obscurity. And then the next levels or next. Whatever you want to call it, Transformers that came after them took up the mantle of, fighting the good fight or the bad fight, depending if you became a Decepticon.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. So anyway, so for after they came up with this concept, they set who the 13 were. Some of them were characters we knew about already, and they suddenly now were elevated this idea of they were being some of the Prime. Some were completely new, and there was published a book called The Covenant of Primus, which is kind of like the equivalent of. There was like this aligned continuity in print form, It was kind of a cool book. I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. I have it on my wall. When we do the flyby, you see like the Autobot symbol on the wall. That opens up to reveal this book you can take out. It's pretty cool. This lovely lady got it for me for Christmas several years ago. But it's, for lack of a better term, it's the Transformers Bible. Not to be sacrilegious to anybody, but it's like the Transformers battle. It tells
No,
their
that's what
origin
you say.
story.
We
you
kind
know,
of use that
yeah.
word for anything.
So,
Let's
but
talk
we never
about
got any figures for
poetry
these
or
guys.
something.
And this year, the toy line that's coming out in 2025 is called Age of the Primes. And they're starting to put out actual figures of these 13 characters, right? For the first time ever. But prior to that, in like 2017, 2018, the toy line was called Power of the Primes. All right? And what they did was they put out a bunch of these little figures. They're little tiny guys. They're supposed to represent the power of the Primes in like this little robot form. They were basically like the same type of figure as a Headmaster that came out the year before when they had Titans Return. Except for they didn't actually pick up a head, but they were basically the same engineering. What they did this time was it was supposed to represent like the spark of the Prime in like some sort of little tiny robot form, like the placeholder for that power, and you can plug it in other Transformers and thus bestow upon them some of the power of that
that's
Prime.
interesting.
Thus the power of the Primes thing, right?
I gotcha.
And they sold these guys in a way that was kind of interesting. They sold them packaged like the original, like the Pretenders. We've discussed Pretenders before on the show. The Transformers that hide inside a shell that kind of gives them the appearance of being organic in nature as opposed to a robot. So that was a way for them to kind of homage the Pretenders and also get these Prime characters out. And so they were called Prime Master because they weren't necessarily the Prime itself. It was the power of the Prime in this figure. All right. So we're going to talk about some of these now tonight. Okay. We're going to go through each one. So the first one, and going back one more time before we start busting out figures here. They put out several of these figures in like this little thing form. You're going to see them here in just a second. Little tiny little figures. They open up like a Pretender shell used to, and inside you pull out the little spark figure of the power of the Prime, which you can then put in other people. This is supposed to be like their disguise mode. They're going around. You weren't supposed to know that was really the power of one of the Primes inside this robot because of the Pretender shell, right? But they did not put out a Pretender shell for every one of the 13. For whatever reason. They put out little figures for all the 13, which you had to be quite the collector to get, in my opinion.
Did you get them all?
I did.
Well, you
so
are.
I guess I am quite the collector somehow. We'll talk about those as we get along. But you could go to the store to buy most of these Prime figures. But the other ones you had to be, either you had to buy the special toy set or whatever. And so we're just going to start talking about here. So we're going to begin first here with Megatronus.
Okay, that is so small.
Megatronus was put out. And this little sword is something I added because part of another toy. Because I thought it looked pretty good.
It
didn't have a weapon per se. All right, but so they put out some figures that same year. That I thought, well, that weapon would go with these guys. It fits in their hand perfectly. Megatronus is put in a Pretender shell that homages Bomb Burst, one of the original Pretenders from the 1980, like the 88 line, right? So when you open this up, the little figure is inside. I'll put this on the screen so you see it better. This is Megatronus' is spark figure.
Can I hold it up?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's so tiny.
Yeah.
Does his
he just
arms
folds
go
it.
down?
His arms go up and down. The head can turn. He folds it in half to become the spark theme for the power of the Prime. Whatever. So in Titans Return, the same engineering was basically would be a headmaster.
Okay.
You plug this in the head, but now there's not a head on there though. It's got the sigil of that Prime. Each Prime's got their own symbol, and they're nothing you would recognize because it's supposed to be Cybertronic. It's just kind of a red blotch of things.
Yeah, it looks.
I'll put
like
it on the screen. But Megatronus. He was the original, he was like the original Decepticon. Megatron takes his name from Megatronus.
Okay.
All right, he inspired Megatron and stuff like that.
Oh, then you know good guy.
He was the betrayer of the Primes. Events that occurred in the Legendary, and he eventually fought with his brothers and sisters to take out Unicron. But then something happened. Well, he was basically lied to by another Prime, which we'll get to, and in his jealousy, he accidentally killed his love, which was another Prime we're going to talk about, named Solus. So he becomes then known as the Fallen. So in the Transformers movie, Revenge of the Fallen, it's supposed to be a similar character.
How do you keep track of all of this in your brain?
I forget normal things, and I remember this stuff,
Crazy.
So this is Megatronus, or sometimes called Megatronus Prime, in a Bomb Burst shell. Bomb Burst also had a third weapon mode. You fold the weapon off his back, and he becomes something you can hold it's like a claw weapon, right?
Yeah, it looks like a rake. Okay?
Yeah. So that's Megatronus, or Megatronus Prime. He's got a brand new figure this year. Which homages his original first incarnation. When Megatronus was first introduced, he was just called the Fallen. He was not considered a Prime, but his story got changed. So next we'll do this one here. We've done this figure. This was Metal Hawk. Okay, so
Chachi.
Metal Hawk Chachi. Metal Hawk was a Japanese-only Pretender. This is the first time he got any kind of likeness like this in his Pretender mode in America. But again, he's got a Prime figure inside.
Can I see him?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull him out.
Okay.
This one is this is Vector Prime. Vector Prime has got power over time and space. His character is first introduced in Transformers Cybertron. And this is before they had the concept of what all the primes were. He was only the second guy to be called Prime, besides like Sentinel Prime and stuff. But he has powers over time and space. That's like his thing. Megatronus, his power is over entropy. He's the guardian of entropy. They have a special weapons. Megatronus was the Requiem Blaster, which made him a lot more like Megatron himself when he comes along later on. Vector Prime had like the discs of time, so he could travel between time and space.
What's he turn into?
He folds over and he becomes like his sigil is like a zigzag line with dots in it, almost like a heartbeat or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It looks like an.
And his Metal Talk Pretender shell becomes a gun.
Oh.
Okay. So he can hide inside that. So that's Metal Hawk / Vector Prime.
Okay.
Next we have.
Oh, look who's down here.
He came down anyway.
Hello. Hi,
apparently our kids upstairs were supposed to come up there. That didn't happen. So talking about Megatronus, next we have Solus Prime. Solus Prime is the first female Transformer.
Oh, okay.
She's also the artificer. I can't say that word. Artificer of the Prime. She makes all their weapons. Okay. She's famous for her famous forge of Solus Prime.
She doesn't have a face.
She's got a hammer that she uses. So in her spark, her power of the Primes thing, she homages a character known as Octopunch.
Okay, it looks like a big lollipop.
Okay, Octopunch, who had tentacles. Yeah, he was a pretender that had like an octopus motif, and he's got that still in his back here now. So you can take Solus out. But Solus, made all their weapons. She's the one that Megatronus accidentally killed, but it was the big betrayal amongst the Primes, which causes them to fragment, and that's why they eventually kind of fade into obscurity, because they weren't able to keep their covenant or their pact to protect the universe. Yada
They're
yada.
Kind of hard to get out.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta grab by the feet. And again, I add this little weapon to him. That didn't really come with that. This one becomes like a tentacle club type thing when you put it in weapon mode. But this is based off Octopunch. So that's Solus. Her sigil looks like like a spoon or something. I don't know, but that's her thing. So she's the.
It looks like a target.
She's like the archetype for female Transformers, right? Next up, we have Skullgrin Pretender. Skullgrin Pretender, again, homaging the original Skullgrin from the '88 series. Okay. He's got the same claw thing on his back as Megatronus does. So there's a little bit of a mold thing going on. The sword did not come with that. I thought it looked good with him.
Wow.
Inside, you're gonna pull that one out. Skullgrin had Liege Maximo. So the first one didn't really kind of have a prime name to it. So Liege Maximo was originally created by Simon Furman to be kind of like a nebulous, kind of mysterious bad guy for like a Transformers Generation 2 storyline that eventually got abandoned.
Oh,
but they brought the name back, and he's effectively like Loki in Marvel Comics. He's a trickster guy. He's kind of a devious kind of guy. He's the one who lies to Megatronus to get him to believe that Solus is up to no good, which causes them to get in a fight when he kills her, right?
I don't like this.
So Liege Maximo is like the worst of the Primes as far as personality and stuff. But Skullgrin was his pretender shell. And
he looks like
his is the only one that actually looks sort of like a face.
Or a bird with underwear.
Yeah. We'll put all these sigils up on the screen here, right? Okay. All right. Next up, we have a pretender shell that homages Submarauder. All right. One of the original Decepticon pretenders. He's like a fish motif.
You made that.
And the sword, again, for these guys, does not come with him. I didn't. No. This is packaged just like this. His weapon mode is like a trident. You can, stab people with it. You can open him up, see what's inside here. But Submarauders was Alchemist Prime. Was who's inside this one.
So he was turning lead into gold?
Well, Alchemist Prime is probably one of the least defined ones in my opinion. Alchemist Prime is he's into like elemental forces, and so I guess he controls earth, air, fire, and water. I don't know, things like that. He's most famous for, in Transformers lore, there's a bar on Cybertron called McAdam's Old Oil House.
Ooh,
this goes back a long time ago, right?
Somebody needs to make a beer for
this was a creation of Simon Furman. It's now canon, at least in one continuity, the Transformers Cyberverse continuity, that McAdam is an alias for Alchemist Prime.
Okay.
His new figure that can actually transform and everything is coming out sometime later this year. So Alchemist Prime, his powers, he's got special glasses where he can see things better than other Primes and whatever, and he's got power over elemental forces.
And he looks like one of those moths that have the false
eyes. His sigil is just a bunch of dots.
On its butt. So you attack that, and birds attack that instead of its face.
Next up, we have Landmine Pretender Shell.
Okay.
This is homaging Landmine, right? He also has the same gun mode as Metal Hawk. In fact, he's basically, the front panel has been redone to make it look more like Landmine Pretender, but the rest of engineering is identical to Metal Hawk. If you open him up, you can see who's inside. Landmine has Alpha Trion in there.
Okay.
And Alpha Trion is one who's been around for a while. He was first introduced in the original cartoon. He's supposed to be like just a very ancient Transformer who's wise and gives advice to Optimus Prime and stuff like that. In the cartoon, he's credited with creating Optimus Prime.
Oh,
Optimus is called Orion Pax, and he gets injured, and Alpha Trion rebuilds him into Optimus Prime.
We'll make him stronger.
That's different. That's different in this continuity where this concept comes from. But Alpha Trion is like the guardian of knowledge. So he like keeps a record of all Cybertron. He's like a guy who's always constantly writing in his book what's happened, what will happen, what is happening. So he's like his idea of being a sage and being wise is played upon here. So that came in a Landmine
and his
homage.
His symbol looks
so it's
like
a diamonds in a diamond
looks like
form.
a TB test.
It's like a bunch of diamonds in the shape of a diamond.
Yeah.
Kind of. Is that fair to say? Right?
Sure.
Next up, we have what I'm losing this one here. It's not
Let me see it.
Cloudburst. The Pretender Shell is based on Cloudburst. Excuse me, another one of the Autobot Pretenders from back in the day.
Okay.
His mode is a double-barreled gun when he becomes a gun mode. Open him up, and inside is Micronus Prime.
Micronus Prime. Ooh.
So, like the name Micro stands out. He is the progenitor of all to the tiny Transformers, like Minicons or Micromasters or things like that. He is their archetype. So he's the first tiny Transformer, I guess, right? Yeah. So his power is there. And his sigil, I don't know how to describe his sigil. It looks like almost like the bat symbol, almost, but upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a great way to put it. It's like a punk rock version of the bat symbol. So he's like Batman 2040 or something like that.
So that's his deal. He's the first of the mini Transformers.
If you look at it like
he had a fairly big role in the cartoon Robots in Disguise, the second round, like in 2015, because he helps train Optimus to get ready for his big fight back on Earth, etc. Next up, we have Bludgeon, a famous Transformer, a famous Pretender.
Let me guess, he didn't come with that sword.
He did not come with a sword. He's famous because for a while, this guy was the leader of the Decepticons in the comic books and stuff. He's a Pretender, looks like a skull-faced samurai.
What happened? Why isn't he the leader anymore?
It's too complicated to go into. But he was took over for a little bit. Then he had this special war planet that he traveled around in space in. This is all comic book related.
Did you fly too close
to
the sun?
He's been a pretty popular character for years because Simon Furman helped make him popular. He transforms into basically like a Japanese kind of war club. It looks like it would be a gun, but it's supposed to be a hitting weapon, believe it or not. Inside of him,
is it a cudgel?
Inside of him is I have to look at my notes here because I always forget. Bludgeon is Quintus Prime. Excuse me.
Quintus.
Okay, Quintus Prime is the scientist of the Primes. He's the smart guy. He's always inventing things. He's always coming up with new things. He likes to tinker with life. He's been getting some love in the most recent cartoon that's on right now called Earthspark. His special power is his artifact is something called the Emberstone that can create new Transformer or new life in general.
Is that
so the Emberstone? And that's just his sigil. But he's most famous for creating, this is all retroactive too, by the way, he created the Quintessons.
Oh.
Okay, those five-headed guys in the Transformers the movie, and in the Transformers 1, they're the people who have subjugated Cybertron and stuff. Quintus Prime is responsible for making those. So kind of a morally gray, maybe borderline bad guy Prime himself.
And
his sigil looks almost like a
crab.
Like a crab or something.
It's definitely a crab.
Yeah. Now, these were the only ones you could buy in stores during the Power Primes line.
Okay, what do we got? But what do we got now?
So there are, if you count, how many Primes do we have right now, Noelle?
Well, that's 8.
8. So how many more do we need?
You said that there were 13, so there are 5 more.
There'll be 5 more.
Yeah.
So they put out these 5 figures kind of haphazardly, and you had to buy different toys to get them. The first one we're going to talk about, I think, is this one. Make sure. Yeah, this one here. And so to build, they came out only as the little Spark figure.
Oh, so you had to get the shell later?
So you had to buy something else in order to get the little Spark figure. So this first one is called Onyx Prime. Onyx Prime is supposed to be the archetype or progenitor of all beast mode Transformers.
Okay.
He is also getting a brand new figure in this new Age of the Primes toy line.
Okay.
So his figure, I'll get out first without showing the screen here. His figure came with a Predaking box set.
Okay.
So that's a combiner made up of animal-based Decepticons that form a giant robot called Predaking. That's the only way you could get this one. All right. So we didn't have a Pretender shell like this. So I decided, well, I'll make one of my own.
Oh, you made it. Oh,
so what I did was I bought a additional sub-marauder one,
Yeah.
like here, all right? And I cut some pieces off, did a little paint job like this, and I made a version of a pretender known as Finback. I'll put this, a better picture of this on the screen. So if you take these two side by side, you can see some of the parts that they share. Okay, but I did some mold changes to the head.
You shaved off
and I
his
painted
fin.
it. I painted it differently.
Yes.
I used some of the fins on the back to be able to make these fins on the side.
How did
Finback
you
is known for not
have
only
it?
having one, like a harpoon for one hand,
Yeah.
so I could sawed a hand off and put a weapon in there. Instead of the trident, he's just got like a spear.
Oh, with
So I
glue?
used a Dremel tool and made it happen and stuff, and then did a decent paint job on there. So I did Finback for Onyx Prime.
Okay.
All right.
And his symbol kind of looks like a dead body wrapped up.
But again, Onyx Prime is supposed to be he's
shroud.
portrayed as like being like a centaur looking kind of robot when
Okay.
he does this thing. All right, so that's Onyx Prime, and again, he's getting a full-fledged figure coming out later this year. Next, we have one here. This is supposed to be based upon Wave Rider, which functionally, in many ways, is almost identical to Cloudburst here. In fact, it's a straight up just a paint job on this one. But the actual toys from Cloudburst and Wave Rider were similar enough where I didn't feel like I had to do too much other than just do a different paint job on it. So this one is just a black version of this, or something like that. But Wave Rider was a submarine-based pretender back in the day. I still kept the double barrel gun, just painted it black. Go ahead and open them up, see who's inside there.
Who is inside here?
This one, let me a little tight because the paint makes it a little tight. So kind of just grab it by the top of the head. There's a thing that you can pull it down.
Okay.
This is the one that's got Prima. Okay, Prima is the first of the ones created by Primus. So Prima is like the leader of the 13.
All right.
He's a Prima Prime sometimes. His
Prime.
his artifact is the Star Saber, which has also gone
His
through
legs are loose.
name changes and stuff over the years. Star Saber used to be a different transformer, then it became a weapon, then it became the weapon of Prima. Some people want to say Prima, but Prima makes it sound too female in my mind.
Yeah.
So Prima is the way I pronounce it. But Prima was the first. He was the first one created by Primus, so he became their leader by default. He is the first one to actually have the Matrix that Optimus Prime is famous for having. He was the first one to wield that, so Optimus has inherited it from Prima.
Okay.
Okay, so Prima went inside this Wave Rider.
And it looks like he's got
Computer
like poison ivy leaf on the back of him. Leaves with 3. Let him be.
Next up here, I have Longtooth Pretender Shell. This is a heavy retooling of the one for Skullgrim.
And let me guess, you did that retooling.
I did it. I added like the flap up here for like the monocle for like the eyepiece. I added tusks because Longtooth is famous for being a pretender who looks like a walrus.
That definitely does the trick.
And so I did some different paint application on it, but otherwise it is this toy modified. So I'll put them side by side. I'll take a picture, put them side by side so you can see how they turned out. Inside of here, go ahead and open that one up.
Okay. Oh, this guy's neat.
Longtooth has a Nexus Prime inside.
Ooh, I like that name.
Okay. Nexus Prime has got an interesting story. He's originally called Nexus Maximus until someone did some research on the internet and realized that was the name of a adult pleasure device.
Oh, no.
So he quickly changed his name to Nexus Prime.
Oh, dear. Yeah, that's not
Nexus
good.
Prime
You don't have to
is
fail those
the
rules.
progenitor of all combiners.
Oh.
So he had the ability to split himself into parts to do different things, then rejoin himself back into one being. So he's the progenitor of all the combiners.
And this is crazy. It looks like you've got teddy bear on the back.
Yeah, I'll pull his sigil will be on the screen too. So for this one, I cut off 2 of the 3 things for this claw, just to make it like a mono claw, just to give it some difference. You know, I'm most proud of this one. I think those tusks look pretty good.
Intricate.
Yeah, and the little
The paint
monocle.
job's amazing. It looks.
Look up Longtooth sometime.
If you had told me that. If you hadn't told me that you made this, I would have thought this is how it came from the manufacturer. That is really incredible.
Next up, we have an homage to a transformer known as Pincher. Okay, Pincher was an Autobot pretender who was supposed to be like a chemist guy. His inside robot turned into a scorpion.
Yeah, so
That's why the Pincher, right?
got it.
So he's supposed to be an Autobot scientist who's good with chemistry and stuff like that. So his outer shell is homaging that. I even added the little guns on the side because the original Pincher had something like that in his shoulder. Otherwise, he's a pretty much just a paint of Metalhawk.
Gotcha. Oh yeah.
Okay. I shaved off the fin on his head so he had a flat head. It was, like the more like the original Pincher toy did. And I added the cannon to the side. I glued something on that part there. Go ahead and open up Pincher.
Okay, I will open up Pincher. Maybe. There we go.
So picture
better
inside
at this.
has Amalgamous Prime.
Ooh, that's a neat name.
Okay, Amalgamous Prime. Amalgamous Prime is another one like Optimus Prime who hasn't had a lot of play, I guess, in my opinion. It's not that I've read. I think he's probably made some appearances in some comic books, but he's basically supposed to be. He's the first Transformer in the sense he had the ability to transform.
Oh.
The other 13 didn't necessarily have that ability. Although the toys that are coming out starting this year do have the ability to transform. In lore, the 13 were just robots.
Okay.
Okay, but Amalgamous Prime could shift. In fact, he was a multi-former. He could basically turn into almost anything he wanted to. So
he's a stem cell.
A lot of depictions of him show him just like a cloud of parts because he could, just kind of do whatever. Some say he's a shifter because he gets shifted almost anything. Yeah. So maybe he's a progenitor of triple changers and quadruple changers or whatever. But his artifact is the transformation cog, which is the thing that gives all Transformers the ability to transform.
And his symbol is a turtle.
It looks like a turtle a little bit, according to Noel here.
Or a really fat pine cone. So
now that brings us up to 12, right? So the last one is called, traditionally it's just called the 13th or just 13. He doesn't have a name because he's mysterious, right? All right. But not so much, actually. Slow your roll a little bit. So I made this one look like, not a pretender, but I made him look like a Power Master named Haikyuu, which we've talked about. Haikyuu is the Power Master for Power Master Optimus Prime.
Haikyuu, the candy.
Well, yeah, but he was supposed to be like, he was really smart, so he had a high IQ, so just kind of portmanteaued it and made it Haikyuu. And the reason why I made him, instead of a pretender, after Haikyuu...
Should name one Portmanteau.
Maybe. But the reason why I made him after a Power Master as opposed to a pretender is that the 13th Prime is Optimus.
Oh.
So if you open him up inside there, his symbol is the center of the Matrix itself.
Oh,
okay? So in the lore, the 13th decided to sacrifice himself to help make the other Transformers.
Yes.
After the battle amongst the 13, where they all were going to go their separate ways, Solus was dead, yada yada. The future Optimus Prime, who's this time just referred to as the 13th, dives into the well of the Allsparks, thus activating it. So more sparks start coming out. The Primes provided their own little whatever to help make the next race of creatures that would come out of the hole, the well of Allsparks. Like Amalgamous Prime provided the transformation cog, so all future generations could transform, yada yada. And out of the hole crawls this new guy, Orion Pax. Everyone amongst the Primes knew who he was, but they kept it to themselves because he for lack of, again, not trying to be insensitive here, but if you look online, there's lots of correlations between Optimus and Jesus.
Oh, Dave, sweet.
Okay?
Oh
Optimus dies, gets resurrected.
You went there.
I did.
You went
Optimus
there.
dies, gets resurrected. The list goes on and on.
Oh,
so Optimus
cancel.
dies by going into this well. He comes out, and it basically lives amongst the Transformers. Like, if you're a Christian, Jesus came and lived amongst us, so he ostensibly can know what it's like to be human, right? Mm-hmm. So Optimus, although the 13th, as he was called, comes out of the Allspark with no memory of being a Prime. He's Orion Pax. He lives his life, and eventually figures out that he is one of the 13 as time goes by. And so they honor that by having his symbol be what's in the middle of the Autobot matrix of leadership. All right. So this one, okay. So these three here. These three, which was Prima, Nexus, and Amalgamous. You can only get those if you got a special pack that had a redecoed version of Optimus Primal in it. It was called the Throne of the Primes gift set. I think it was available at San Diego Comic-Con. So it had the box itself was like a throne that Optimus Primal could sit on. They had a fan vote for who was going to be the next Prime, and he was the winner. So they made this toy set of it, and these were the only way you could get those three there. Okay, and this one too. Sorry, this one too. These four, I should say. So this one you can only get with Predaking gift set. These four you can only get by buying the special gift set only from like the San Diego Comic-Con, and that's how you can get all 13.
Wow.
Right? And so I made his pretender shell to homage the fact that he's supposed to be Optimus Prime in a future life by giving him Haikyuu, like I said.
Wow.
So that's the 13 Primes. So this year, the Age of the Prime storyline, we've got 3 of those so far. We've got Megatronus in a new form. I'll just put an image of it real quick on the screen. We've got Prima. He's got a new form and a new full-fledged toy. And we've got Solus. But Alchemist Prime's coming out, and Onyx Prime is slated to come out. The year before this one, I'm not sure if we'll get another version of this, or they'll rebox it, but we got Vector Prime too. Vector Prime's got an homage.
These are
new
all
toy.
coming out from Hasbro.
These are all coming out from Hasbro and Takara. Yeah,
Wow.
Takara told me, I should say, right?
Okay.
So whether or not the rest of 13 will come out, they've not all been announced, but I'm hoping they will because so far I've been really pleased with these new toys. The 3 I have so far I've done on SIPs. Go check out our SIPs, by the way. Really outstanding toys in my opinion. So different size classes to kind of reflect things, and they look like what you would kind of expect them to look like, you know.
That's awesome.
So that's the real basic breakdown on the original Transformers from the Power of the Primes line. Again, these are not supposed to be them per se. It's like just their power in the form of these little spark robots.
Yes.
Now we're getting the actual Transformers, the actual toys of the actual original 13 like that.
A lot of mythology.
A lot of information
background
dumped here on this one.
today.
Yeah. It gets really deep on this, but not every continuity acknowledges the existence of the 13. It just kind of depends what you're into. So if you're a hardcore Marvel Comics guy, these guys, they're not even a thing. You know?
Okay.
But I think it's fascinating. I like the idea that these guys were like the originals, and each one of them has some sort of aspect that other future Transformers have. So almost like they kind of gave a little bit of their portion to help create the next line of Transformers that came out after them.
That's rich.
So after that huge information dump, you stuck around this long. Let's celebrate by talking about a place we went to a couple weekends ago.
Well, let's just keep this
This religious kind of thing going on.
Sacrilegious continuity going, because we went to a new brewery that's in Osage Beach, Missouri.
Near Lake of the Ozarks.
I guess it's not super new, but it's called the Sanctuary, and it is made. They created this brewery in an old church.
Mm-hmm. As an Anglican church, I believe.
Oh, I don't know if it was an Anglican church, but here's the deal. They actually rent the literal sanctuary out to the local Anglican church. So it has services there on Sunday, which means that the brewery is closed on Sunday. But for a few other days of the week, the brewery is open, and it is also an event space. So they've really done a cool job of reusing this space to create a fun, welcoming environment for people to come and enjoy.
I'm probably wrong because I frequently am, but the way I understood it is that the church, was looking to sell for reasons that churches have. The people who have the sanctuary bought it from them, and was basically leasing it back to the church. So that's why they have the services still there. So it's like a win-win for both, because the church doesn't have to have all the overhead of maintaining a building.
Yeah.
And they just pay a fee to have their service there, which is probably cheaper than paying electricity and and mortgage, yada yada.
But the space is super cool. And it's owned by Brian and Jennifer Roberts. And the beer is wonderful.
Yes.
And the space is a lot of fun. And it says on their website that Brian was originally an engineer, but he loves figuring out how things work and how they're put together. And he took that passion and he turned it toward brewing. And as they say, the results have been delicious. And I have to agree. It says on their website that they're open Tuesday through Thursday from 3 to 9 p.m. And then on Friday and Saturday, they're open till 10. They have their in-house tap list that's always evolving. They also have guest taps, guest beers on tap.
Guest things in cans too.
And they have a really fun food menu that continues with the whole theme.
Okay.
Like, for example, their brewery bites include religious nuts.
This is a nut tray,
Yeah.
right?
Olive the Lord, which is a marinated olive medley.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
When we went there, we were between meals. We didn't order food, but
Yeah. They have
bacon of hope
and baptismal dip. But then those are just some bites that they have, but they have a lot of charcuterie plates. They have some flatbread, soft pretzels, and really fun free popcorn.
Yeah.
So they have a popcorn machine going
with a seasoning bar. So
Yeah.
like you can grab different like popcorn seasoning to flavor your popcorn kind of how you like, which is kind of cool. And that was all gratis.
One other fun little thing, just for me, is so Jennifer Roberts is actually from where I grew up. We went to the same high school, so it was fun to see her. We know their family. One of the reasons we went there is that her dad said, next time you go down there, my son-in-law is opening a brewery. You should go check it out. And so we sure did. And we we went there with our friends and we were camping and we loved it.
They each had flights. We had all kinds of cool stuff. That's gonna talk about
I've got their current tap list up. They had what they call the Holy Grail Cream Ale. Mm-hmm. I had that one. It was delicious.
We tried every one of their beers that they had.
The blueberry Kolsch was like a purple.
Yeah,
it was fabulous.
Really good.
I think this one was your favorite. It was the Sunburn Strawberry Cream Ale.
Yes, the strawberry cream ale was really good. That was
I had a
very strawberry, but like fresh strawberry. It wasn't artificial strawberry. It was good. Really good.
I had Tan Line Tropical Wheat, and that was delicious. So it was a wheat beer, but it had that pineapple-y taste that you kind of associate with IPAs.
Mm-hmm. Citrus thing going on, yeah.
So there was a River Bottom Nightmare IPA. That was just a regular American IPA. These Nuts Brown Ale, which was
really good.
Wonderful brown ale, yeah. And then the Dad Bod Oatmeal Stout.
Yeah.
Just a good oatmeal stout.
That oatmeal, that brown one, the D's Nuts, that was like, like every brown ale you've had was really good. This was no exception.
Yeah.
It's kind of like chocolatey, like honey brown slash, velvet underbrown like we talked about last
nice
one.
mouthfeel, a real creamy head.
Yeah.
And then I had an Ozark Amber. That was part of my flight, and that was a beautiful amber beer. Everything had great color and great flavor. I finished off with they call it a Bob Light.
Yeah, it's a Bob Light, like the Pilsner. Bob Light?
Yeah, and
Bob Light?
it was probably the most average of all the beers we had, but I would say the one that really struck that tropical wheat was very tasty. I really enjoyed it.
The strawberry one,
and I love that color of that blueberry Kolsch. Holy cow, that was one of the most beautiful beers I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by it.
But unfortunately, they're not doing takeaways yet.
Yeah.
No growlers, no bottles.
So one of the reasons they're not open all days of the week, I mean, including Sunday, obviously we explained why, but they are using those days to brew. And so their brewing is there on site in the sanctuary,
visible behind the bar.
Yeah,
you can see
and
them working
so
on stuff.
Same situation with Evergreen. Right now they're just keeping up with the demand of the people that come in the space to enjoy their beverages there. So hopefully next time we get to go down to the Lake of the Ozarks, we'll be able to swing by and maybe have some cans. But so we didn't have an opportunity to bring any to
nothing
taste
to taste in front of you. But keeping with the theme of Transformers religion and beer and religious places,
something to drink.
We're gonna celebrate by having
the last of the wine.
A little wine
that my mom brought over tonight. It's a Malbec. so we're gonna close with that. But Dave, seriously,
I am a minister.
It's true. You are Reverend Dave, but you're pushing it, man.
Okay.
We're gonna get the lightning is gonna strike us through the ceiling. But yeah, so if you get a chance to go down to Lake the Ozarks, go to the sanctuary, you won't regret it. It's a great the space itself is very cozy, very comfortable, very beautiful.
It seemed to me like the church was initially built to be kind of like on the old main strip.
Yeah.
So it kind of almost had like a business front to begin with anyway.
Yeah.
So I got the feeling it was a business that got turned to a church, then now back to a business. I don't know that history or not, but that's what it seems like to me. But it's a great use of space. It's beautiful on the inside. You can go peek and look in the actual sanctuary where they still have the Anglican services next door. Good food, but looking food. We saw people eating rats, so it always looked good. We didn't get to have any, but
we tried all the beers all the beers that they had.
And I don't think there was not a single one that we didn't like.
No, but that blueberry Kolsch was something special. I have to say. So
let's toast to the Primes.
All right.
I look forward to seeing more of them as the new toys come out here. So keep watching Sips as I get the new Prime toys. I'll put those out there. But.
And also, please keep giving us recommendations. Like we got recommended the Sanctuary. Put it down in the comments if you have a brewery, a beer, or a spirit, or a distillery that you'd like us to try. Just let us know because we would love to do it.
We need recommendations of places to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're always looking for anything. If you'd like to know anything about any particular Transformer, we did 13 tonight for crying out loud. But if you'd like to know about any more Transformers that we haven't done, drop us a line so we can start thinking about how we would do that video. As we get ready to wind down here, and we'll cheers with the wine here real quick. This is pretty good.
Yeah,
He'll
thanks,
sip again.
Mom.
But as we kind of finish up here, if you'd like to know more about the 13, Chris McFeely, he always name drop. He's got a video about the 13 on the basics on. So on YouTube, go look the basics on the 13. It's a great video to kind of reiterate some of the stuff I said, but give you a lot more. If you'd like to know more about individual figures, go to tfwiki.net. That's my number one source to look up for Transformers information. It's the Transformers Wiki. But as we wind down here, thanks for watching us. Make sure you hit all those buttons at the bottom. Tell us, send us along to your friends and colleagues, especially if they're into good adult beverages and good Transformers. And we really appreciate all of the likes and comments and subscriptions.
Yes. Thank you for all our subscribers.
So as we say here on
Thanks for sticking with us.
BeerFormers, please play responsibly and drink responsibly.